All right, we're going to start with good news today, folks, and then we're going to move on to some baffling news. But good news first, okay? We have now solidified the four-day truce. I guess, like, it's not technically a ceasefire, but it is a 4-day long truce. Now, this agreement was tentatively made last week. However, the Biden administration has been pushing for it, and finally, Israel has accepted the terms. And so this is great. It's a 4-day break from hostilities in order to send in humanitarian supplies and aid that is desperately needed across the Gaza Strip. On top of that, it includes the releasing of some Hamas hostages, as well as releasing of Palestinians who have been imprisoned. Now, one thing to note about this is that Palestinians are often imprisoned within Israel without charge, meaning because they are subject to a different legal system. Specifically in the West Bank and the occupied territories and East Jerusalem, if you are arrested by Israeli police or the IDF, you do not, they don't actually have to charge you. You don't have any rights. So they can hold you indefinitely. And there are people who have been held indefinitely for extraordinarily prolonged periods of time, right? So a lot of the people who are being released fall into that category. But here's what we got. Israeli cabinet approves truce for hostages, deal with Hamas, Palestinian prisoners also to be freed. So let's just take a look at this. It is the first halt in the fighting. The deal calls for a 4-day ceasefire, during which Israel will halt its military offensive in Gaza, while Hamas frees at least 50 of the roughly 240 hostages it and other militants are holding. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the first hostages to be released are women and children. The government of Israel is committed to bringing all of the hostages home. Tonight, the government approved the outline of the first stage of achieving this goal, the office said in a statement. A statement released by Qatar, which mediates with Hamas, Wednesday morning said the deal includes the release of a number of Palestinian women and children detained in Israeli prisons. The number of those released will be increased in later stages of implementing the agreement, and that it would allow additional humanitarian aid into Gaza, but the Israeli statement made no mention of either of those elements. So, yeah, more aid, good, but I also just want you to note that Israel was imprisoning children, again, often without trial, if they happen to be Palestinians in the West Bank or East Jerusalem. So, just something to keep in mind as, like, part of the apartheid state here is that Israel has effectively just been rounding up, the elderly and children to be held for indefinite periods of time. Remember, we covered that story where, people who were in Jerusalem for medical attention, who had gone there prior to the invasion of Gaza, Palestinians who had gone there, and who were from Gaza, could not go back because the Gaza Strip was being attacked and invaded, and also the Israeli army didn't renew their visas to stay in the hospital with their sick and injured loved ones, and so they just started arresting, like, parents and grandmothers and, like, caregivers for anyone who was in the hospital. It's like, when we say, like, this deal is to release women and children prisoners in Israel, who are Palestinian, that's generally who they're talking about, right? So, yeah. Well, considering that, like, half of Palestinians are children, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, right? So, just to sum up again here, here's Qasim Rashid, who is, by the way, a candidate in Illinois. for U.S. Congress. So if you are in Illinois in District 11, please vote for Qasim Rashid. Breaking, Israel and Hamas agreed a temporary ceasefire, 4-day ceasefire, Hamas to release 42 hostages, 30 children, 12 women, Israel to release 150 Palestinian prisoners. Human rights orgs estimate 1,000 Palestinian children in Israeli prisons. Around 1,000 children in Israeli prisons, again, being held often without charge for indefinite periods of time. Like, that's crazy, dog. Yep. My body. Yeah, now, by the way, this is the editor-in-chief. If you've been wondering why I don't tend to take a lot of the Jerusalem Post's claims at face value, this would be why, right? This is Avi Meir, who is the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Times, saying, remember this, the Palestinians who will be released in the impending deal are convicted terrorists who are in prison because they tried to murder Israelis. The Israelis who will be freed are innocent civilians being held hostage by terrorists. There is no equivalence. None. Now, I need to really emphasize to you that, again, in the official statement that we read, the Palestinians being released from prison are going to be women and children. And whether or not they were convicted is absolutely not, like, verifiable at this point. Like, again, because there's no right to a speedy trial if you are being tried by the Israeli military in their military courts, which is the court system that presides over East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank. And this is the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, people. Now, this is, by the way, pointed out by Ryan Grimm, who is just absolute goat of a journalist. This lie will get millions of views, but no community note. The Palestinians being released by Israel haven't been charged or convicted of anything in a real court. What do you call women and children who are captured by foreign gunmen and held without trial? That's who Israel is exchanging. And that's true. Like, the military tribunal system is not a normal court. You don't have rights in the same way you have rights if you are a citizen in a military court. Ryan Grimm is based. This is true. So, all worth noting, and also just very desperately needed ceasefire at this point, specifically because it gives more time. Every day, every hour we can gain allows for more time to negotiate longer and better ceasefires. Every minute we get allows for more time to negotiate us away from the brink of wholesale slaughter of Palestinians. And that is a good thing in my book. Let us take all the time in the world, you know? And here's just another reason. Like, this is from yesterday. Israeli tanks surround North Gaza's Indonesian hospital. Like, again, this is from the BBC. Like, they are poised to just, like, absolutely decimate, in a literal sense, decimate the Palestinian population of Gaza. And, like, they're surrounding hospitals with tanks here. Okay? And you might be like, oh, well, they are Hamas strongholds. And we'll get to that, because I'm increasingly not sold on the idea that places like Al-Shifa, which, again, over and over ad nauseum, Israeli officials said was a massive headquarters for Hamas in the Gaza Strip. I am less and less convinced of that, actually, as time goes on. But the fact that they are surrounding these hospitals with tanks, with troops, and doing raids and not seemingly finding much is really kind of well, it's kind of throwing a damper on the whole their secretly Hamas headquarters thing that Israel has kind of stamped, like kind of planted its propaganda flag into, right? And well, to be a little bit more blunt here, well, to circle back around to what I was saying previously, I think that while Joe Biden's stance on Israel has been absolutely terrible, it is becoming increasingly clear to establishment politicians that they have vastly misjudged where the American people would be on this issue. And I need to encourage you guys, keep fighting, keep showing up to protest, keep calling, keep being disruptive, keep being a pain in the ass of the establishment, because frankly, it is working and they are scared. Like, I mean, just look at this segment from Meet the Press.
Overall, this is the handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And again, it kind of measures overall up with Biden's foreign policy approval. But look at this. Among the oldest group of voters, 65 plus, there's a majority who approve of how Biden is handling this. That's plus 12. Look at the youngest group of voters. 20 approve, 70% disapprove. He is 50 points underwater with the youngest group of voters. That is a 62-point net swing between youngest and oldest on this topic of Israel and Hamas.
And it's a critical group of voters that he needs.
That is a yes. 18 to 34, very critical group of voters that Joe Biden needs to win, and he is down 50 points. Like, I know that, like, people are really doomer-pilled right now about American politics, but the fact that these numbers are coming in so strongly, so quickly, like, he has to recalibrate, and any political strategist would know this. People are going to remember a 50-point drop in support in one of the key demographics. Right? Polls are shit. Polls might be shit, but this is from an NBC News poll. This is from mainstream polling. This has been reflected across poll after poll after poll. And frankly, not all polling is shit. And I think that this is actually very indicative of where people are right now. The 18 to 34-year-old demographic hates how Joe Biden is handling this. And not only do they hate how Joe Biden is handling this, but they believe firmly in not voting for politicians who cross them on this issue, right? This is airing on NBC. NBC is putting on a graphic that shows the support of 18 to 34-year-olds at 20 goddamn %. Okay, this isn't bad. This isn't like, oh man, that's a bad poll, dude. Oh man, that's really bad news for Biden. This is like, you hit the red button, scramble everyone you have, and you start like moving on this today. You know? And it's very fascinating, right? Plus in Minnesota, I think it was, he won by 150,000, and there are around 250,000 Muslims, most of whom supported him, working on his campaign, even, and are now vocally against him. Yeah, like, I mean, like, one of the things that we really have to take into account is that Joe Biden is old, and a lot of people in power in Washington are old. And they are from a different era where you didn't really have to take into account how Muslim people were going to react to international news and the U.S.'s position on international news. And they are also from a generation where you did not have to consider, like, people encountering Palestinians. You know, like, or like the stories of Palestinians being like widely dispersed, you know, like even during like the 80s and 90s, right? It, like, you did not hear the Palestinian narrative. And like I cannot stress to you guys enough that there is internal pressure as well from people who are working in the diplomatic corps, in the State Department, in like every level of government, where people are upset and pushing against this and threatening to resign. Like people are putting their jobs and careers on the line here to say, no, this isn't okay, actually. Again, this poll is meaningless. I don't think this poll is meaningless. I think that this poll, while bounded in time to right now, and is not necessarily how things are going to look a year from now, I think it is indicative of a major thing. And like, frankly, Biden can't afford to lose, 1 to 2 points in a key demographic. He can't. And part of the issue here is this is definitely, it's not going to translate to him losing like half of young voters, obviously, when the election rolls around. But if it's, I don't know, a 10th, a 12th of young voters, that could be enough to completely decimate his ground game, his volunteering, the people who volunteer their time and effort. It can be enough to like completely destroy his chance of swinging states. Like, this is not, this is indicative of a deeper problem that is going to haunt his campaign going forward, right? I have insight working in state government in California, but both state staffers and federal staffers in our state are all noticing that this issue was heavily misjudged, like beyond what most analysts predicted. The letters I get from the younger demographic is insane, but insane in a good way. Younger voters are changing the way the established politicians are assessing everything. Our voices have power, and I'm seeing that firsthand working from the inside. Thank you for letting us know, Hapsley. Because, yeah, I have a couple contacts, and like the response that is happening inside all of this is crazy, dog. Like, this is if you've been seeing the leaks that have been happening, if you've been seeing like the statements being put out by like internal cables, like, this is unprecedented levels of like the Democratic establishment being like, oh no, we fucked up. How do we reposition? And we're seeing the chaos right now. And I like the repositioning and the shuffling around is not fast enough for the people of Gaza, but we do need to recognize that it is happening, that the chaos is real, that the disorganization is real, and that the repositioning is also real. After running numbers, my electoral group found Biden's handling of Gaza cost us our city council race. Down ballot Dems got hammered in enough numbers to let the Moms for Liberty candidate beat our socialist. Oh, Jesus, Gamer G. I'm sorry to hear that. From what I've heard, both parties are currently shocked on how younger voters are bucking the system. It's scaring them. Yeah. I mean, it's probably scaring Republicans a lot less, but yeah. What you mentioned about people putting their lives on the line too, I won't leak anything because the state senator I work for is legit, and I don't want to tarnish that. But there is a rep who almost lost over 50% of his staff. The rep is now neutral, but changed his stance from pro-Israel to neutral, which is something. Yeah. Like, holy shit. People are, like, I don't want to either, like, overhype this or underhype it. The repositioning is real. Oh, California. In CA. But, like, the pressure is changing things. I mean, when you might, like a representative might not care if their voters are angry. But a representative will care if like half their staff are threatening to quit. If like all of the young people in their office are like, that's a no from me, dog. You know, like they're going to notice that. They're going to take note of it, and they are going to recalibrate, because if even their staffers are willing to like throw aside their career, something is deeply, deeply miscalculated. So anyway, I think it is telling both a lot of the aggregated polling that we're seeing. I think that it is telling that we are seeing even this segment being aired on mainstream television by MSNBC. I think it is telling that we are seeing the Biden administration, instead of just giving Israel a completely blank check, is now trying to establish end goals for what the governance of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank will look like after this. I think it is telling that we are now seeing this ceasefire happen, or truce, temporary truce, whatever the official terminology for it is, happen. I think all of this is telling of a massive course correction, because the mainstream media didn't see this coming. Biden didn't see this coming, and basically Democrats at every level of government did not see this coming. Additionally, we do have to talk about this quickly. More reporters have been killed in Lebanon. Now, if you're wondering, why are reporters dying in Lebanon? Well, that's because while Israel has been invading the Gaza Strip, they've also been bombing Lebanon, like like along the southern border of Lebanon. And they claim that they're bombing members of Hezbollah, who are firing rockets into Israel. And however, they seem to be killing a lot of journalists. And again, we went over a couple weeks ago the report from Reporters Without Borders that found that Israel deliberately targeted and double tapped the position of journalists with an Apache helicopter. And well, that seems to be a continuing trend of Israel targeting journalists here, because we have now 50 journalists have been killed in this military action since it began, and that is an insanely high number, by the way. Just out of curiosity. Yeah. To compare this, by the way, to one of the largest scale operations, military operations recently in Ukraine. Right? "17 journalists have been killed." And you might be like, "Oh, 17 since Russia invaded." No. 17 since 2014. Over the past 9 years, 17. And yet, somehow, miraculously, Israel has killed 50 in like the span of like 6 weeks. Absolutely unconscionable. 2 reporters working for a TV station in Lebanon were killed, along with a third person, Tuesday in an airstrike which the Lebanese prime minister blamed on Israel. Al Mayadeen, the channel which employed the journalist, said the strike about a mile from the Israeli border had deliberately targeted the TV crew, owing to the channel's pro-Palestinian sympathies and its support for Iran's regional military alliance. Broadcaster NBN Lebanon quoted Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati as saying, "This attack proves once again there are no limits to Israeli crimes, and that its goal is to silence the media that exposes its crimes and attacks." Al Mayadeen named the journalists killed as Farah Omar, a correspondent, and camera operator Rabi al-Memari. The third person was identified as Hussein Akil. Al Mayadeen director Ghassan bin Jiddo said the strike came from after Israel decided to block access to the network's website this month, according to Al Jazeera. Jiddo also said Akil was a contributor to the channel, though the network told Reuters that he was not working with them. In response to the attack, Hezbollah lawmaker Hassan Fadlallah said, "The crime against the Al-Mayadeen team is intentional. The resistance will not tolerate harm to civilians, and any harm to them will not go without a price as part of the equation." So, when he says that, by the way, what he means is effectively Hezbollah and the Israeli military take an eye for an eye approach, where Israel bombs Hezbollah, Hezbollah bombs Israel. Like that seems to be kind of the dynamic that is going on here. Though it should be noted that Hezbollah does not seem to be escalating tensions here. So yeah, it's I mean, it's just horrible. It's just horrible, and it is indicative of basically the Israeli government's desire to conceal everything that they are doing and to blind the world to the crimes in Gaza, as well as, frankly, silence any kind of opposition. It's deeply, deeply sick and deranged. Which, by the way, speaking of Israel targeting civilians. Now, many of you are familiar with the music festival that happened near the Gaza Strip prior to the Hamas attack on October 7th. And it turns out that Israel and the IDF were able to scramble a response to that attack. But it seems that the concert was extended last minute in order to give them more time to party, and Hamas was not actually aware of the music festival when they engaged in this operation. And this is, by the way, according to the Israeli outlet Haaretz, right? So this is from a translated version of this. There is a growing assessment in the security establishment that the terrorists who carried out the massacre on October 7th did not know in advance about the Nova Festival held near Kibbutz Raim, and decided to come to the place after discovering that a mass event was taking place there. The security systems assessment relies, among other things, on the investigations of the terrorists and the investigation of the incident by the police, from which it appears that the terrorists intended to reach Kibbutz Raim and nearby Kibbutz Zim. According to a police source, an investigation into the incident also revealed that an IDF combat helicopter that arrived at the scene from the Ramat David base fired at the terrorists and apparently also hit some of the revelers who were there. According to police, 364 people were killed at the festival. In addition, according to police sources, the party was planned to be held on Thursday and Friday, and on Tuesday evening of that same week, the army approved the organizers of the event to hold it on Saturday as well, after the request of the organizers. The change at the last minute reinforces the assessment that Hamas did not know about the incident. Senior officials estimate that Hamas found out about the existence of the party using drones or parachutes and directed the terrorists to the location in their communication system. In a video from a body camera of one of the terrorists, he is heard asking a captured citizen for directions to reach the bad guys, even though he was in a different area. One of the findings that strengthens the assessment, according to the police and other security officials, is that the first terrorists arrived at the party from the direction of Route 232 and not from the direction of the Gaza fence. So, worth noting here that an Israeli attack helicopter responded early and blew up people who were partying there. Like, some of the people killed, an undisclosed number of people killed at this festival, were killed by Israeli helicopter. An Israeli helicopter. That's pretty interesting to me. And it's also very interesting that in this story, it seems people are very hesitant to talk about how many people the IDF is suspected of having killed or maimed with a rocket launched from an attack helicopter. And how many rockets? Was it just one rocket that hit festival goers, or was it 2, 3, 4? Those details are not public. The adjustments from 1,400 to 1,200 estimated dead came from Israel discovering around 200 burned bodies were Hamas fighters. Yeah. What's the bet? It was all of them. I mean, I would not go so far as to say all of them were killed by Hamas, or all of them were killed by the IDF. Certainly some of them, possibly most of them, were killed by Hamas. But it's interesting that, like, they're like, oh yeah, and by the way, this attack helicopter blew up some civilians. Anyway, moving on. Like, come on. I just... And, like, I don't necessarily want to say, like, oh, the Israeli government is covering it up. You know, like, oh, you know, Israel secretly killed all of those partygoers themselves. All I'm saying is, like, it's kind of shocking that there's no follow-up to, okay, the IDF fired upon Hamas and hit some of the partygoers. How many seems to be the next logical question, and there's just radio silence as to that, and I find that very strange. And yes, maybe one can use that to make a point about Israel not caring about Palestinian life or Israeli life, but you know, I'm just saying that was a shocking story, right? But not nearly as shocking as this interview. All right? Now, Christiane Amanpour is a phenomenal journalist, and she does really great interviews. I like watching her show. She had on Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel. And he said something that absolutely floored me. Like, jaw dropped. Because it seems to fly in the face of all of Israel's propaganda campaign. And I'm just gonna let this play, and you guys can we'll talk about it as things progress here.
Start by asking you to what is your view of whether your government, your military, has done a good enough job of proving their claim that there was a major command center and bunker under Al-Shifa?
It's already known for many years that they have in the bunkers that originally was built by Israeli constructors underneath Shifa.
Now that's really interesting to me, because that is the first time I have ever heard that the bunker underneath Al-Shifa was built by Israel. This is the first I have heard of it. I have been hearing Hamas HQ, Hamas Command Center, the tunnels that they built. They built a gigantic bunker complex under the Al-Shifa hospital. And he's just like, oh yeah, we like the state of Israel. We built that.
Were used as a command post of the Hamas and a kind of a junction of several tunnels, part of the system. I don't know to say to what extent it is a major. It's probably not the only kind of command post. Several others are under other hospitals. So.
And by the way, note the change here. Like, oh yeah. And again, we've been hearing Al-Shifa. Al-Shifa is where Hamas HQ is. Al-Shifa. They have all the tunnels under there. There's a huge complex underneath Al-Shifa. Let's can we get the yeah. The IDF literally posting what they believe. Oh God, really? 1 second. Where is the footage? Where's the footage of what they said was underneath Al-Shifa? Videos. There was an animated video going over like what the IDF thought was underneath Al-Shifa. I'm trying to find that video right now. Ah, here it is. Here's IDF, the recreation of the complex underneath Al-Shifa. Look at all these tunnels. Oh my God. It's just a complex web, a maze down there of just an incredibly huge complex. But you know, it's actually Israel built it, I guess. But you know, maybe they built an incredibly huge complex under there, and Hamas is now just using it. That's possible, right? Let's hear what this guy has to say. Let's hear him out.
In other sensitive places, but it's for sure had been used by Hamas even during this conflict.
When you say it was built by Israeli engineers, did you misspeak?
No, decades ago we were running the place. So we held them. It was many decades ago, probably 4 decades ago, that we helped them to build these bunkers in order to enable more space for the operation of the hospital.
Okay, so just to really hammer this home, how insane this is, right? Even Christian Amanpour is like, wait, what? I've been a journalist all my life. I have never heard this. I've never heard this. Did you misspeak, former Prime Minister of Israel? And he's like, no. We were there. This is probably like 4 or 5 decades ago, and we built it. We built a bunker to give the hospital more space, which, if you're building something to give a hospital more space underground, why would it be a bunker? I guess. Haaretz reported that the bunker was built by Israel in 2009. That's actually wait, Brithulu, do you have a link to that post? Do you have a link to that article by Haaretz? I would love to see that. If they built it in 2009, that really does beg the question, how can they not find it? If they built it in 2009, hell, if they built it 50 years ago, how can they not find it? Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, this is crazy. Sources, Hamas leaders hiding in basement of Israel-built hospital in Gaza. This is an incredible find, Brithulu. How did you find this? This is from 2009. Sources, Hamas leaders hiding in basement of Israel-built hospital in Gaza. Shin Bet chief says militants hiding in Shifa hospital because they know it will not be targeted by Israel. And they say in this article it was built by Israel. Many are believed to be in the basements of the Shifa hospital complex in Gaza City, which was refurbished during Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip. Shifa, the coastal strip's largest hospital, was built while Gaza was under Egyptian rule before 1967. During the mid-1980s, the building underwent massive refurbishment as part of a showcase project to improve the living conditions of residents. Millions were invested in the project, which was overseen by Shmuel Goren, the coordinator for activities in the territories at the time. The Israeli civil administration in the territories constructed the hospital complex's Building Number 2, which has a large cement basement that housed the hospital's laundry and various administrative services. During a cabinet meeting a week ago, Shin Bet chief Yuval Diskin said senior Hamas officials found refuge in the hospital basement because they know Israel would not target it due to the patients in the upper floors. Palestinian sources told Haaretz that not all the senior Hamas leaders are hiding in one place. Rather, they have spread out, and some are constantly changing locations. Some of the bunkers they are using were linked by tunnels Hamas built in recent years. So, again, we do have to say, like, how, like you read, first of all, it's interesting that this article from 2009 does not refer to this as a bunker. The bunker is like a modern propagandistic term for it. It's in a basement, the hospital basement that Israel built. So it's not like a secret underground bunker. It's a basement in the hospital. You know, as many hospitals have basements and underground parts of the facilities. You know, it doesn't, strangely enough, does not look like a massive underground complex. This is so bizarre. Thank you very much for linking that. That was incredible. I just Tablet magazine cited it in their article that's been going around. Gotcha. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Tablet magazine, but thank you for that. Yeah. So Israel built this basement and then started saying, you know, a decade ago that oh yeah, Hamas is just they're in the basement. Hamas is hiding in the basement, in the laundry room / administrative area. Interesting stuff.
In the very limited size of this compound.
Okay. All right. Well, that's sort of thrown me a little bit. So these were there for a long, long time, but you're claiming, or they're claiming, that they're used as a major command center. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that as yet, they have not shown conclusive proof of that. So may I ask you what you would...
Christian,
Yeah?
Christian,
Yeah.
wait a minute. It's not easy. We take...
So Christian Amanpour is correct here, by the way. Israel, despite having control of Al-Shifa Hospital, has not been able to prove or show significant Hamas activity being conducted. They've been trying to be like, see, we found this tunnel that goes underground. We found a tunnel, except that like the facility that they're talking about underground is the administrative section in the basement, right? Should be relatively easy to find. Again, because Israel built it. And yet, here we have article after article here coming out. Here's The Guardian. IDF evidence so far falls well short of Al-Shifa Hospital being Hamas HQ. And this is something that they have said, again, you can note that Haaretz article from 2009. They've been saying this for over a decade, that Hamas has been operating out of Al-Shifa, that Al-Shifa is the headquarters of Hamas, and yet, so interestingly, this does not seem to be the case. Footage to date fails to prove Gaza complex was nerve center for attacks on Israel, as military has claimed. Prior to their capture of Dar al-Shifa Hospital, the Israeli Defense Forces went to great lengths to depict the medical complex as a headquarters for Hamas, from where its attacks on Israel were planned. The evidence points produced so far falls well short of that. IDF videos have shown only modest collections of small arms, mostly assault rifles, recovered from the extensive medical complex. That suggests an armed presence, but not the sort of elaborate nerve center depicted in animated graphics presented to the media before Al-Shifa was seized, portraying a network of well-equipped subterranean chambers. Even the videos produced so far have raised questions under scrutiny. A BBC analysis found the footage of an IDF spokesperson showing the apparent discovery of a bag containing a gun behind an MRI scanning machine had been taped hours before the arrival of the journalists to whom he was supposedly showing it. Now, very interestingly, we're going to go over this, but it's so interesting because, man, if you had evidence dead to right, if you had evidence just completely lock solid, why you gotta like tamper with the evidence, huh? Why you gotta make some changes? So here's the BBC article, by the way. Al-Shifa, what we know about Israel's raid on Gaza's main hospital. The Israeli military has raided Gaza's main hospital, what describes as a targeted operation against Hamas. Here's eyewitness account from the hospital. Kader, a journalist inside Al-Shifa, told the BBC's Rushdi Abu-Alouf that Israeli troops were in complete control of the hospital and no shooting was taking place. He said 6 tanks and about 100 commandos entered the complex during the night. The Israeli forces went room to room, questioning staff and patients. The IDF reportedly asked all men aged 16 and 40 to leave the hospital buildings, except the surgical and emergency departments, and go to the hospital courtyard. Soldiers fired into the air to force those remaining inside to come out, Kader said. However, Mohammed Zakut, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry's director of hospitals, told Al Jazeera that not a single bullet had been fired because there are no resistors or detainees inside. Israel says Hamas operational center found. Early on Wednesday, the IDF said its forces were in the midst of a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specified area in the hospital. It said the raid was based on intelligence information and an operational necessity, calling for the surrender of all Hamas terrorists present there. As the soldiers entered the hospital complex, they engaged with a number of Hamas members and killed them, the IDF said. Which, interesting. Interesting. On Wednesday evening, the IDF said troops found an operational command center, weapons and technological assets belonging to Hamas inside the MRI building. Now, this is very interesting. We're going to come back to the MRI building in particular. It said it was continuing to operate in the hospital complex, sharing images and videos showing what it said were Hamas weapons. In a 7-minute video, IDF spokesperson Jonathan Conricus pointed to security cameras that he said had been covered over and weapons that he said were AK-47 rifles hidden behind MRI scanners. The BBC has not yet been able to verify the video or its location, but unless Israel has more to reveal, the military's controversial operation inside the hospital did not net a major arsenal of weapons, reports the BBC's Orla Guerin in Jerusalem. Hamas knew Israel was coming, and therefore, if they were operating beneath the hospital, they would have had weeks to clear out through Gaza's extensive tunnel network, our correspondent adds. Israel's army radio reported the troops had not yet found any sign of any of the 240 hostages taken by Hamas during the 7th October attack on Israel. And, let's see. However, Dr. Ahmed Mokhalalati, plastic surgeon at Al-Shifa, told the BBC there were only civilians in the hospital. He said there were tunnels under every building in Gaza, including Al-Shifa Hospital. So, like, yeah, the what they're talking about here is quite interesting. Because here is their evidence inside of Al-Shifa, right? The BBC went into Al-Shifa. So I just gave you the background, and here's kind of the first-hand thing here. Let me find this.
We're in an Israeli military vehicle inside the Gaza.
Here.
Say that among the things they've uncovered are more than a dozen Kalashnikovs, grenades, personal protective equipment, some of it with the Hamas military brigade in.
I just real quick, like, oh yeah, bro, we totally found these guns and these military shoes next to the MRI machine. Like, I need you guys to understand something about MRI machines. I need you guys to understand something about MRI machines. They do not get along with guns. They do not get along with guns. I think we might have talked about this story briefly a while back. But they tell you to take off anything metal because they pull in metal. They are gigantic magnets. They are gigantic magnets. If you bring a gun into an MRI machine, those bullets all gonna start firing. They're giant electromagnets. So, I'm just going to say, maybe Hamas fighters, if they've been based in this hospital, as Israel claims, for like 40 to 50 years, might know not to store their guns next to the MRI machine. Especially not, like, in a pile of just other random shit. Does that mean you can't get an MRI if you have fillings? It depends on what metal your fillings are made out of. Because It depends, you know. If there's iron in your fillings, they will rip your fillings out. God, I can't get over this. I can't get over it.
Hamas military brigade insignia on it. You can see some of them here hidden under these bags of medical supplies. We're also told that there have been laptops found with some information about the hostages. They also found some recent files that suggest this may have been a Hamas operating base as recently as a few days ago.
Whoa, that's crazy, dog. Let's see. Yeah, our visit was very tightly controlled. We had very limited time on the ground. We're not able to speak to doctors or patients there. Also, keep in mind here, any journalistic outfit that is going in embedded with IDF troops, anything they put out is subject to IDF review. IDF review. Oh, fun fact. MRIs are almost never turned off because there's a non-zero chance they will never come back on again. Cool. Cool. Ugh. We need to find a higher quality video clip than this. Here we go. Here is, by the way, BBC's analysis of this.
Israel described the Al-Shifa hospital as the main headquarters for Hamas's terrorist activity. This IDF animation, posted in late October, claims to represent a Hamas tunnel system underneath the hospital. But having been inside Al-Shifa since early Wednesday, Israel's yet to produce evidence of the tunnels. It has allowed the BBC and Fox News to film at the hospital, though only locations of Israel's choice.
This is what they found.
Israel also released its own 7-minute video, which BBC Verify has analysed. A watch, visible in that video, suggests it was filmed a few hours before the BBC arrived. And this IDF video was posted, then deleted, then reposted, this time without a section referring to an Israeli soldier who'd been held hostage.
I don't know when this was used the last time.
Also in the video, we see a room with an MRI machine.
Interesting. The MRI machine again.
And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you will be able to see is military equipment.
The BBC was shown the same room. And
Damn, that's crazy, dog. You mean this? Wow, it looks literally very different. That's so strange, dog. You mean the IDF would do that? Just put together a propaganda piece like that for the press?
the BBC was shown the same room. And what we see in the two videos doesn't precisely match.
At
example,
all.
There's one gun in the IDF video, two by the time of the BBC footage. Israel has told BBC Verify this is because more weaponry and terrorist assets were discovered throughout the day.
And as always, an AK-47.
Israel also says its video is a single shot with no edits. But this appears to be an edit. We don't know the reason.
Yeah, it certainly appears to be one. Yeah. I would say that that would certainly appear to be an edit. Either that or this guy is just like some sort of Naruto Shippuden time skipper or something. I don't know. Maybe we found the one shonen anime protagonist here.
We don't know the reasons for that edit, nor how significant it is. The IDF, though, says suggestions it's manipulating the media are incorrect. The IDF video also shows military equipment in other locations, though we can't verify how it came to be there.
But also, it's very interesting to me that they're like, see, look at all of this military gear. And it's like, 12 guns? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, 12 guns is like a lot of guns or whatever. But like, I'm an American, and I literally know offhand probably like 5 or 6 people who have more than 12 guns. Okay, like, I know people who are better armed and equipped than apparently this Hamas command center. This is crazy. Just real. Here, we'll finish this.
And what we see in this IDF video doesn't equate to Israel's description of al-Shifa as an operational command center for Hamas. The US is using a different phrase, saying al-Shifa was used as a command and control node.
Yeah, well, Door Kickers Inc. They also don't live in like a place where, you know, every government official has like an AK-47. And frankly, I mean, let's be real, there are plenty of hospitals in the United States where there are like people with fully automatic weapons like guarding the corridors or whatever.
That implies a much smaller facility. Israel is adamant this hospital was a command center, but for now, at least, it's either not found supporting evidence or it's not sharing it.
Let me put it this way. If a hospital is being considered the operational command center for an internationally recognized terrorist organization, it's pretty weird that they can only find the same amount of guns that like your average rural American owns in their house. You know, that would be a weird number of guns to find in the operational command center of like a significant terrorist organization, like a weirdly small number. If you find a bunch of guns and want to show them off to reporters, why would you not spread them out like the local sheriff does after a drug bust instead of stuffing all of them behind an MRI machine? Well, frankly, my answer to that is because they want to show, see, look at how dastardly and wild this Hamas operation was. They had 2 whole guns behind this MRI machine. They stored their brand new IBM computer behind this MRI machine. You know, computers, the other things that MRI machines are really good friends with. Hey, Scotty Death God. Israel's government thinks a lot of people are buying their propaganda hook, line, and sinker, and I think they're finding that that is not the case anymore. Let me just real quick.
I think here this is the most important piece of evidence that we have against Hamas here. As you can see, this is a dress that civilians wear. What is this, you may ask? Hamas tunnels. This is a map of Hamas tunnels. You can see here, they all wear it, and Hamas finds where the tunnels is.
Yeah, I feel like this is just some normal dress design.
Are you I think this is sympathizer? Do you want Israel to die? Is this what you're saying?
Oh.
Cut! Bro, give me another reporter. What the fuck? What this says, whenever we come close to their tunnels, as you can see, it senses and it says Allah Akbar. Listen to this. Allah Akbar.
Oh,
It says Allah Akbar.
that looks like a normal fire alarm to me.
Cut! I told you to give me another reporter. What is this?
God. So anyway, let me just go back to this this Guardian article. All right. In a video shown later, the number of guns in the bag has doubled. The IDF claimed in its video of what it found at the hospital was unedited, filmed in a single take, but the BBC analysis found it had been edited. Israeli forces say they are still carefully exploring the site. The video presentation of Al-Shifa did show the main facilities lay deep underground, and it's quite possible the Israeli soldiers have not reached them yet. So there could be much more to come, but the attempt to present what has been found so far as significant is bound to fuel skepticism about whatever is presented later. There are questions over how much of its graphic presentation of the network under Al-Shifa was based on what Israel knew already. Its own architect had built an extensive basement area there the last time Israel directly occupied Gaza, up to 2005. So again, Israel literally built the basement facility that they've been talking about as like the Hamas command center, the Hamas command center, the Hamas command center. And yet, strangely, can't seem to find it. Can't seem to find it. It's so strange. How bad is it that I couldn't tell that was fake for a few seconds? Oh, come on. She was wearing a plastic bowl over her head. Come on. Hamas. Yeah, this is, by the way, they're like, yes, we've done it. We've found the Hamas tunnel shaft. Why'd you guys have to? Why'd you have to like blow a hole in the ground to find it? If it's connected to the basement that you guys built under the hospital, like, this seems odd to me, to say the least. Can you link the parody? Yes. There you go.
אנחנו לפני שעה וחצי מצאנו פה את הרכב בסרטון הקודם עם כל האמצעי הלחימה שהיום הוא להגיע ב7 לאוקטובר לכיוון ישראל. לאחר חיסוף עם D9 נמצא הפיר הזה באותה נקודה. ממש באותה נקודה שמצאנו את הרכב עם כל אמצעי הלחימה. כמו שאתם רואים, הבניין הקטרי, בסדר? בתוך מתחם שיפה. פיר מבצעי של חמאס עם כל התשתיות הרלוונטיות.
You know, weirdly enough, do want to point out that the stuff that happened at Al-Shifa, the initial attack on Al-Shifa, you know, Israel gaining control of Al-Shifa, happened a week ago. That happened a whole week ago. And still the best evidence we have so far seems to be a bunch of AK-47s strewn seemingly at random around a hospital, and weirdly not being consistent between IDF propaganda reels. It's so strange to me. So bizarre, even. Now, why is this important? Well, for a couple reasons, right? It's important because, number one, the entire crux of Israel's PR is essentially that Hamas is an evil organization that uses human shields by hiding in the basements of hospitals. Right? Number two, a lot of Israel's focus has been on seizing these hospitals or destroying these hospitals. And frankly, if Hamas isn't in one of those hospitals, it makes them look incredibly bad, as if they've just been blowing up hospitals. So it was actually really pivotally important for them to get confirmation of a Hamas HQ underneath Al-Shifa Hospital, and yet that doesn't seem to be the case. And why is it so important that they discover that there's a Hamas HQ underneath this hospital? Because their entire propaganda is oriented towards that, and because they want to avoid the accusation of committing atrocities and war crimes. Because guess what? It's in violation of the Geneva Convention to just bomb hospitals or even attack a hospital. Like, this is just straight up on multiple fronts violating international law in a way that the world, frankly, the world has frankly done an amazing job at turning away from the abusive Palestinians on the West Bank, you know? Amazing job of that. But unfortunately, Israel is realizing that they can't just get away with, banking on the US's support and the world eventually just kind of accepting the new status quo. They can't do it. Right? And, well, yes, Israel is incredibly good at violating international law, but the issue is, they're realizing the goodwill is running out. You know, there's a reason why AIPAC has announced it is going to run $100 million of ads and support in the upcoming 2024 election. And it's because they have been building up their political influence over the last, decade or so in order to facilitate a continuance of American support, even if manufactured, for Israeli activities. And frankly, they need a PR win. They need a PR win that justifies their atrocities against the people, the Palestinian people. And they're just not going to be able to do it. AIPAC was founded in 1953. Yeah. It's been operating for a very long time. However, in American politics, in the past decade, the amount of political maneuvering and influence that they have been able to gather has skyrocketed. And it's largely through their lobbying efforts. And it's largely because Israel has been pumping more and more money into AIPAC's lobbying efforts, right? This has been part of a coordinated, years-long campaign to accrue political capital in the United States.